Yeah, he's fixing shit for me right now. He killed 4 of my chickens. He says he's got 4 ducks running loose outside. One of them will be missing at any time. Okay, we are live and on camera, I guess. Well, y'all are not. Let me get camera. I can turn it around every now and then. Yeah, I can see y'all's pretty faces every now and then. Second Kings 8 will be there. We're going to point out something, and then next week I plan on changing a little uh, procedure way I'm going about doing these studies. Uh, I'm going to kind of have little bios on each king from here on out, and then the stuff that's each king. Like in other words, we're going to. Huh? You call it little what? Little. I'm doing a little change, a little transition from the way we've been doing this. So I'm gonna have because it's going to be going really back and forth for a while, and so I'm going to do kings from so and so and kings from the south, king from Judah, kings from Israel, and I'm going to do some information on each of them. We might not read every verse, go through every verse, and then we'll hit where they connect and things of that nature until we get a little closer to the uh, uh, end of each of the kingdoms before they get taken into captivity. Let me check something. No, not that one. Oh, there we go. Okay, this works. Sort of. Okay. Um, well, we're in Second Kings 8. Last week we talked about, remember the lepers that decided there was nothing left for them. Although if they went into the walls of Samaria, wouldn't be anything in there anyway. No one had any food, and so they went to seek out the Syrian army who was getting ready to attack the Israel. And remember, God had created in all the armies this sound of all these surrounding armies come together, and so they fled. They fled so quickly. They left all their supplies. They left their livestock. They left their horses, everything, and they just left. And so these lepers come from it, and they're like, "Huh." And so they scavenge some of it, and they take it back, and eat and everything. They're like, "Oh, this is good." And they go back, and still no one there. And so uh, then they thought, "Well, this is a good thing." So they went to report it to the Samaria, and they was like, "Well, this is it's a trap. They've just done this, so we'll get out there, and then they'll attack us." And so they sent a few people on ahead to do it. By the way, as part of this, remember Elisha, what was the prophecy he made to the captain of the guard, the captain of the Israel's army? What did he say? He said, "You shall see it with your own eyes about how cheap the food prices would be. You shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat of it." And so, how was that fulfilled? So as they brought it back and it started getting set up, it'd be like uh, uh, there was a day last week or a week before last when the snow was on its way, and it just cracks me up. Walmart was out of milk for about 2 days in a row, and they was out of eggs and all that type of stuff. And and you could imagine, especially if it was really going for a long time, it wouldn't. How long would it take before, if all of a sudden Walmart got huge load of milk and eggs? People would get on. Oh, they got milk now, and so what would it do to the crowd then? It'd be like, it'd be like parking lot full, and everybody be like, "I want my milk." I'll get 3 or 4 gallons. Just I don't know what those people that bought 3 or 4 gallons. I don't know what they're doing with their milk now. Because milk is not like something that can last forever. You can technically freeze it, but it don't. It tastes lousy once you freeze it. It's just not very good because it never comes back quite right. But it's got a shelf life, and so like, why are you buying that much milk when you're no way you're gonna be able to drink it all? It just bewilders me. It's like I can somewhat understand toilet paper from the standpoint at least toilet paper don't expire. But I don't understand something like milk. It 2 3 weeks is all you're gonna be able to have it. So how are you gonna drink all that milk unless you have a huge family in 2 or 3 weeks? It just anyway. Uh,
Makes no ice cream out of it.
huh?
Makes no ice cream
I
out of it.
guess, but it would take.
That's the reason I was trying to get some.
Well, but the snow wasn't very good for that, and if you listened to the forecast, you would have known that because it was going to be an icy mix here and there. And so it just really wasn't a good snow for that. And so once again, you only make so much of that. It's actually, the most recipes, and when I've made and actually it's better to use something like whole milk or even condensed milk or something. It make it thicker, but you use mostly snow and just a little bit of the liquid to make your snow cream. So yeah, it just you're not going to be able to use it all. Is the point? You just can't use that much milk. Um, so I guess something fell. I imagine there was a sheet of ice that fell.
Ice is moving.
Yeah, ice is moving. Uh, and so, but anyway, uh, so people always done things like that where they hoard. But anyway, getting back to what took place, you can imagine in day and age like that when you heard it was a famine for years, and all of a sudden you heard there was cheap food in Samaria. You could imagine how people would all of a sudden, just come storming it, and so they ran over, trampled this guy to death. So he saw that it was being sold that cheap, but he never got to eat of it as a result. Okay, we're going to chapter 8 now, and it says, now Elisha had said to the woman, now this is the woman, member, we went over this a little bit last week, but whose son he had restored to life. And you can look in 2 Kings 4, around verse 18, and you can see that story again, how, uh, she had been generous to Elisha, built him a place to stay when he was in that area, and he wouldn't know what he could do. She said nothing, but Gehazi, his servant, told him, hey, she doesn't have a son and her husband's old. So uh, she said she'd have a son. And then the son, number of years later, died as he went out to the field, and he fell faint, and he took him inside, and he died on the wife. And so she took him up to the area where Elisha would stay, and she immediately went there. Elisha does wind up uh, uh, resurrecting her son. And so at some point in time, we don't know the exact time. By the way, a lot of this stuff is not in chronological order, and I'm going to be able to prove that to you in a little bit. It says, now Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, arise and depart with your household and sojourn wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will come upon the land for 7 years. Okay, that's a long famine. And like I say, especially when you didn't have uh, nice interstates trucks can transport goods, trains where things can be transported, ships where things can be transported. So basically, during a famine, most people, if they had the means, you know what they did during a famine? They'd go somewhere else where it wasn't so bad. Even remember Jacob and his household, that's what they had to do. They had to go down to Egypt. And so here, Elisha just tells this woman, you need to go. And so the woman did according to the word of man of God. She went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. So the famine didn't go down to where the Philistines were. And so she went there and was just fine. And then in verse 3, it says, at the end of 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she went to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now, property rights are, I guess, a little different, and she had been gone 7 years. Now, even in our country, and it varies from state to state, but most states, if you're gone for 7 years and someone occupies it from 7 years, you know what happens to your land? It goes to them. Yeah, they get to claim it. And so some places it's 21 years, but there's a lot of little in betweens there. In some places it's 21 years, but once you've been there 7, they can't kick you off. So if you will pay the taxes and do the stuff for 14 more years, the land's yours. You didn't pay a dime for it other than keeping it up. So that's why you've really always got to, if you have property, you've got to be on the uh, got to be a little aggressive on making sure that that property is not occupied. Because if it becomes occupied, uh, someone can make a claim on that property at some point in time. So, uh, don't know what the legal rules were here, but in essence, someone else had taken possession of the land. She had left and vacated it, and someone else took possession of it. Uh, Now, the king was talking with uh, Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me all the great things that Elisha has done. Now, okay, does that seem odd to you? That the king would be talking to Gehazi? Now, if it doesn't, you need to think about what happened to Gehazi. And this is where it should be a trigger for you to understand that this is not a chronological part of the scripture here. So, why do we know it's not chronological? What happened to Gehazi? He didn't die, as far as we know, but what did happen to him? Remember the story of Naaman? The uh, commander of the army of the Syrians at that time, and he came down with what? Leprosy. Naaman had leprosy, and some servant girl told him about this man of God in Israel, and so the king of Syria gave him, told him to go ahead. He brought a fortune. I mean, a large fortune with him, and he went to the king of Israel and said, you know, heal me from the from the leprosy. I was told that you could do it, and the king was like, "Whoa, wait a second here." Um, he said, uh, said you're talking to the wrong guy. Maybe need to go to Elisha. So he went to Elisha, and did Elisha, as far as we know, ever even meet Naaman? No. So what did he? He sent his servant Gehazi to tell Naaman to do what? Dip 7 times in the Jordan, specifically the Jordan. And Naaman at first thought, well, we got much better rivers in Syria. Well, one of his men that were with him told him, why not just dip? Is it really that difficult of a thing? The man of God said it. Why not do it? And so he did, and he was healed. And so Naaman goes back to the house of the man of God, and Gehazi meets him. And what did he want to do? He wanted to give the man of God this great reward, this great prize. And yet Elisha said, no, that's not how it operates with God. And so Naaman leaves. Who chases after him? Gehazi. And he actually kind of shortchanged a little bit, but I think it was because he knew if he got too much, it would be, you'd be able to tell that something's not quite right. My guess is the servant of a prophet probably didn't pay the greatest. And so he got his, whatever his reward was, and he went back and he gets chastised by Elisha. He said he saw it. Whether he saw it physically or just God revealed it to him, I don't know. But what happens to Gehazi then? Because of this not doing what God had decreed. What did Gehazi? Remember, Naaman came down, and what was his problem? He had what? So what did Gehazi get because of this? came down with leprosy. And basically, his whole family was cursed because of this. Now, so if someone had leprosy, would they have an audience with the king? So, how can this be then? How do we explain that the king was talking to Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, and the last we read about Gehazi, he had leprosy? How do we square that away? Had to be before. There you go. So this was earlier, and that is not that uncommon with Kings and Chronicles. They do that quite often because they're telling narratives that set up things the way it's compiled. So this was a narrative about the Shumanites' land being restored, and then we're going to get into something else that is even a little bit later. But so when you're reading the Kings and Chronicles, it does become good to have a commentary or that book, The Harmony of the Kings and of Israel, really comes in handy on something like this because uh, it will it'll go through in the right order, a chronological order. Now, uh, you do lose a little something because there's thematic things that the way it's told. So, but anyway, we know it's before he came down with leprosy. Do we know how long before? No, we don't have a clue. We just know it's before. And I will say this: there's no way to know that, like this Crockett that set up this harmony of the uh, kings of Israel. There's no way to know some of it if it's actually right or is it wrong, you know? And one of the things he does too is like this narrative, like Elisha told this woman. Well, he will back that up to where he actually possibly told her that. Once again, that's a little bit arbitrary, but to me, it works well in this context too to see the whole sequence of why she had come back. So logically, it works better to be like this, but yet he will give this two verses like way back. Just understand that. But there is I think, a good use for both. Book of Daniel, for example, the Book of Daniel is not told in chronological order. The first six chapters are in a sequence, but then you get the prophecy chapters from 7 to 12. They fill in anywhere from like shortly after Daniel 2 to Daniel 7. So they're all over the map. In fact, one of the prophecies is not actually the last. It's like so. There is a good commentary on that, but uh, like I say, you can actually tell if you read closely because the prophecies of Daniel, when it gets to those, it will say during this time period. And so then you can research and figure out, well, oh, this would have been chapter between 3 and 4. This would have been between 4 and 5. This would have been before 6. But anyway, just beware of that when you're reading and studying, even in the gospel accounts. So, what's the best way in the gospel accounts to know when events took place? How would you know? Because they didn't record it in a chronological fashion. So, have you ever noticed that some things you'll read early in Matthew will come later in Luke or whatever? So, how would we know? How do we know, or how would we have a good idea? Because once again, this is people have put this to a thing to try to. Now, your Bibles, and I want you to look at this because these are
This,
really handy things.
this information is on both sides of the verses.
Uh huh.
Is that where you can find out the information you're talking about?
Not
Online?
always. Not
Oh,
always.
well, that's what I'm asking
You'd
you.
have to do some digging, and you could possibly determine some of it, but you have your work cut out for you. Let's just put it that way. Um, now, uh, so let's see. Let me find it. I should have found this before. Sorry. Okay, but there's some good things in here I'm going to point out to y'all. Okay, 4308. A. So much like we've talked about, uh, I'm kind of using as a little bit of a guide the harmony of the kings of Israel, and so it goes, list them in different things. So some things you'll have in Kings, some things you have Chronicles, and a lot of things you will have on both, and so you can kind of see where they sync up. So what will we do on the New Testament? 4308A. Keep going. You're on 4308. Go to 4308A. That's 4311. You got to keep going. Well, now, I wouldn't like that if you don't have this, because this is a very important part. Huh. Let's see. 40. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe yours don't have. I would think it does, though. I know yours has cut out some because since it's large print, it don't. It may not have it. Surely it does. That's all the same.
I'm not 43. Didn't have hardly any information.
Yeah, but his 08 doesn't have it. Okay, let's see. Okay, here it is. Let's see. Okay. Yours is 4303A. That's why we couldn't find it. It's got a little more information than mine, but it's okay. There you go. Yours has a little bit more information, I think, but anyway, it's in color too. But the harmony of the Gospels. Maybe you've heard of having a harmony. In fact, J.W. McGarvey has a harmony of the Gospel called the Fourfold Gospel, and it weaves the individual verses so it reads like a uniform thing. Um, but so this is according to whoever compiled this harmony. Uh, this is the way they have depicted uh, the chronology of things. So uh, I'm looking at what they've done because okay, the pre-existent Christ. If you see, let's see, go back. Let's see what yours has. Some people do it differently. Uh, yeah, it does. Okay, the pre-incarnate Christ. Yours has got this thing, which is more like I've seen, but on ours, Larry, it's got this pre-existent Christ, and it talks about some things. And but at some point, John 1 is included through a certain point, talking about predating all this that took place. Even the verse John 8 58 says, "Before Abraham was, I am." And so it goes through some of those things, Christ and prophecy. But then you see, so the very first things that happen is the angel appeared, the Gabriel appeared to Zechariah. That's John the baptizer's father. Now, why is that the first thing included in the New Testament? What was one of the ways that John the Baptizer was described in prophecy? What was he? He was the Messiah. He was the forerunner. What does a forerunner mean? Came before. So he was one that came before. So if you read the events, by the way, we actually know exactly how much before he came. So how much older was he than Jesus? 6 months. So he was 6 months older than Jesus. So the fact that it starts off with that uh, that account, that was the very first thing in the New Testament. We had the forerunner, uh, and then in Matthew's, it's got the angel appears to Joseph. It's got Mary and Luke back, so they go back and forth, much like what we're used to. Luke 2, by the way, the only account of the birth of Jesus is in Luke 2. And yet, everybody makes the biggest deal about the birth of Jesus, and yet in the gospel accounts, only one book uh, deals with that. I say it's not important. No, it wouldn't have been in any books if it wasn't important at all. But the point is, I think we make more of it than what Scripture actually did. Um, and then you see Matthew. The next thing in Matthew's account, though, is the Magi, the wise men that come. Now they came afterwards, maybe even 2 to 3 years after the birth, and then of course we know that they went to Egypt and then to Nazareth. But you see his visit to the temple and all these other things, and then you see uh, once Jesus' baptism, and you notice a lot of them have that, and you start seeing more of that. John does his own little thing because John was written so much later than the others. But then you see, a lot of the different things in accounts, and you can see there's an overlap. Some of the books have more information, some have less. Some books have only that's the only thing recorded. It's a hodgepodge. But if you go through there, you'll see it just goes through everything, but it goes through it in a chronological order. So if you want to read the New Testament and you want to know when things took place, that would be a good thing. Now, something your Bible has, keep turning now. Keep turning. Um, okay, keep going. Keep going. Got to get past the harmony.
That's what.
Page at a time, though, because you're going to hit it as soon as the harmony's done. Yep. Okay. You're going to get a tree. Oh, look at that. Yeah, I like this one better. Let me see. Does it have is that yeah, I like ours better on this. I mean, I guess there's benefit in there. So you can see yours with the large print, it's got a kind of like kind of outline form, I guess, is the way you describe it. Um, whereas the traditional, in fact, if you look at traditional Thompson chain, they will have a map and they'll have the same information. They have several maps that go through the different parts. Like yours has got a different sequence there. Why I like this is because, uh, well, it's kind of got it, but it doesn't have it. You know what I'm saying? It's just more. Uh, it's different. You have to do a little bit more work. Whereas this one's got it right on there, like you go from one to the other. This is how he did it. And, he had a sketch of the map and he would draw you know, so you can actually follow, where he went based on the events. Now, this is awesome to use if you want to uh, see where the events took place at the time. So it's the same information that's in the harmony, but it actually shows it, like this one here, the journeys of early life. Uh, where was Jesus born? Bethlehem, right? And then it goes to Jerusalem because what did he do when he was 8? Where did his parents take him? 8 days old?
8 days old?
Mm-hmm.
So they took him to Egypt.
No, he's 8 days old. Where'd they take him? 8 days. What was a good Jewish male child, Israelite male child?
They named him.
Well, but what else did they do? What was required of male babies? Circumcised. What day did they do it? They did it 8th day. Well, and what else did they generally do if they was close enough? They would generally have a blessing. Where? At the temple. So they took him to Jerusalem, the temple. Remember, he had Anna the prophetess, and I forget the older individual. But anyway, they they would go to Jerusalem. So they went to Jerusalem, and then where'd they go? They went to Egypt, like you said. They were told as they were leaving that. So then they stayed in Egypt for a while, and then they went back up to Galilee. So you can actually trace it, and then they're actually got verses when these things take place. So if you want to do a study of the early life of Jesus, you can follow that. Then you get the year of his inauguration. Now that's talking about when he was baptized, and it shows that year of popularity. Jesus actually. Now, how long was his earthly ministry, roughly?
3.5.
About 3.5 years. And so there was a year in that where he, like the crowds just became enormous. And indeed, people would follow him because he was doing these miracles. Um, and, uh, so you can follow that transition. Now, uh, everything was going good in that regards, but then there became a year of opposition. And that's when the priests and scribes, you notice this is even 2 pages on mine. And once again, got all the different events and sketches. And excuse me. But anyway, you can once again follow each thing because it's numbered and you can see it. Um, Jesus, his last months, it shows that. So he went there. And then it even gets specific. I don't know if you keep going to the very last of that. Does it have the temple diagram?
Yeah.
It does. It's just a photograph, though, more of it. Of them. Yeah. So, and see, you can see the difference in your. I mean, the picture's great. I mean, but this has like call outs and it goes through every event.
Now the numbers on this here tells.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. You just got to do a little more work.
Yeah.
Whereas this has got all the pictures too. So it's like not just the overall picture, but little sketches in between. Um, and, you know, um, I like it in sketch form like this better because I think you can get the gist of it better. But anyway, you can go through the crucifixion of Jesus. That page there is on. It's very similar to this page. But once again, you've got the now you've got from the 3rd hour to the 9th hour, and that was the actual time he died. How many expressions were said? A lot of good information there. In fact, you know, a good uh, Lord's Supper talk would be dealing with the last things he said. And by the way, uh, what was the very first thing that most people agree he said while he's on the cross?
Forgive them.
Yeah, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. Which I find fascinating. That was the first comments from Jesus. Um, and so, anyway, this is really, really good stuff. And then it's got the appearances of Jesus. Um, uh, I like pictures. Yours just doesn't have the pictures like ours, but I mean, it's all there. You have to visualize it in your own head, but you have to visualize the pictures. It tells who all saw them, but you see how great this is. Then it even goes to, it's got a thing on 7 churches of Asia. Yeah, it's mainly just historical things. It's okay. Um, Life of Peter. Then you get Paul's missionary journeys where it does the same thing. Now, I want to tell you, a lot of times we overdo things. So, in other words, someone starting off preaching, they're going to look at these commentaries, they're going to do all this. I want to tell you, you need to focus on this, just the events first, and then if you don't understand something with more depth meaning, yeah, turn to something else. But this gives so much of a dynamic of what events take place and when they took place, what's going on, and so you get a lot of good things there and all the missionary journeys of Paul. I'm not sure what comes after this. Outlines of the early church just talks about things. Then it's got some other information. Now, I want to tell you, if you go backwards, we started at that. Yours was 4303. You actually uh, go back some. Uh, you got some things about prophecy, outline of Acts, prominent men in the New Testament. But if you go back far enough, you get character studies, um, and those can be really nice. You also, as we've looked at before, um, you'll get that same uh, uh, type of presentation of certain lives of people. For example, you got character studies, and then after the character studies, you've got let's see, you got the prophecies. Those are really a good study. So, those things are great studies. But then you get, like, before you got to about Jesus, you got these maps of other key figures. He does one on Abraham that does the same thing. He does one of uh, Moses. Moses gets about the same type treatment like Jesus, as far as, tree of Moses's life goes through the journeys of Israel. Then you got Joshua gets one. You get Gideon and Samuel. Then you get Saul, the first king. Then you get David, the second king. Solomon, and that's all it goes through. I wish he went further, but we can we can go through some things. Maybe I'll come up with one of these. That would be good to have something like that on every character of the Bible. It just allows you to do some in-depth study. In fact, I may try to do that with these other kings and see if we can't go somewhere. Okay, let's get back to 2 Kings 8. Why did I show you that? Well, the purpose of this class is to help you study and to learn how to study on your own. So if you want to know something, say about Jesus' life, well, pick one of those subcategories and then do some digging on that and actually look at it like, where did he go from? If you ever watch any of the history type shows or stuff where they'll explore, say, a certain battle in the war, say D-Day or something like that, the storming on Normandy, you know, there will be, I've seen some YouTube videos where they say at whatever time it was, they were preparing, they'd done this, even go through some of the background. Then, when they first landed, what the opposing forces were they, and, it's like it goes through the whole battle and what happened that was good for us, what was bad for them, how many people, anyway, it goes through it that fashion. Well, I think we need to do that with our Bible studies as well. So, not just learn about parables, for example, but what were the events surrounding when the parables were, the Sermon on the Mount was said? What time period in Jesus is actually pretty early on. And so we can start seeing how. So, when you think about the parables, was how different that was than what was being taught in those days. It's not that he came up with something totally different. It's just that he went further than anyone had ever explored the law of Moses as far as what God really intended for man to be. And so you can see those things and understanding how different that would have been. And so someone teaching like that, people would have been drawn to see, well, what else is he going to say? And then you have miracles that really draw people to him. But anyway, it's good to know not just the events taking place in a very, focused way, and to see it big picture and how things were going on and developing in Christ's life. I think it does better. Paul's missionary journeys, it's good to know them in a sequence like that. Some of these kings, like David, it's good to know his progression. It's good to know someone like Daniel, his progression in that. How many people really, and this is something I probably didn't really think about until I started really trying to present Daniel in as sermon form or Bible classes. Daniel, at the beginning of Daniel, was a fairly young teenager, and when he's cast in the lion's den, he's in his mid 80s. Uh, you know, how is that depicted? Well, usually they'll show a similar age person at the beginning and at the end. It's like, no, he was, this is over a 70-year time period that the book of Daniel conveys. And so Daniel went from a young teen to an old man. And so it helps when we study about these things, these people, and know what's going on. It helps to know when Jesus is in his early ministry compared to his late ministry. Um, so anyway, this will really help you do that if you want to take it to that level. And I think it's good. In fact, what we may do at some point is just go through some of these map charts and follow somebody's life like that, because it does give us a good uh, uh, understanding of the chronology of the events that took place and why maybe this was said here as opposed to at the beginning of the ministry, why things changed. Why did he go from a year of popularity to a year of opposition? And did his ministry really change much? Well, no, other than the fact he probably didn't stay in Jerusalem as much as he did when his early ministry. So, uh, uh, but we need to understand that very much. Okay, let's go back to our set. What do y'all think about that, though? And like I say, this is one of the things why I'm a big fan of the Thompson Chain Bible, because it doesn't tell you what you need to interpret or think about things. It just gives you all the information at your fingertips, and that's what we need. We need to. We don't need to be told what to think about what the Bible says. We need to study and embrace it, and know it. And sometimes people can put their own little spin. I know there's times that I can look back at things when I was younger, I would teach, and I'm like, I wouldn't have said it that way now. I know more, I've learned more. But the thing is, you don't just listen to someone saying it, you have to dig into it yourself. And so, where we, I think, got off track somewhere in probably the 60s and 70s, probably the 70s more, is we lost focus from digging into this and more listening to someone tell us. Um, and that really has cost a lot. Yeah.
Did you show that version of this Bible on the?
I have not. I have not. I don't know.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think they had bought Peyton one of those.
Which
One
one?
of
Did you
these.
buy one of these?
Yeah.
Well, then, if he's following along, he could go through and see that. Yeah. If he's got one like this, then it will be just exactly like Larry's. That is a fairly new thing. There's some good points to it because it's big print.
Yeah.
But because of that, it can't do. It's probably why it can't do these charts, because you can't upsize the print on some of these charts and make it work because the text is bigger. So uh, you wouldn't be able to do some of these maps in the way. See how small that is and small that text is? You couldn't do that on a Bible the way that thing is formatted. So to do the text bigger, it's got to do it in more tabular form.
That magnifier that Richard Boardman used.
Yeah,
It worked good with
it would work good with this, yes. Or you'd almost have to have, if you wanted a large print version of this, you'd have to have like a fold out thing that came out so it could be bigger, which those things don't hold up very well. Uh, but it's the same information. It's just that you'll have to kind of look at the tabular thing and then go to a map or whatever, look at it. So it's there. It's just this is really in front of you, but you can see it's much smaller, and I'm sure that's why they chose not to do it that way.
Mine don't show the map.
Yeah, because this text here is really small if you get down to it. So the purpose of a large print Bible is so people can see it. I want to get one of those just because that would be probably an easier thing for me to use in my sermons. When my glasses are more configured to my reading vision, I can see this pretty good right here as long as I got decent light. But uh, one of the reasons, so if you've ever wondered why do I show so many scriptures on my PowerPoint, and for two main reasons. One, I don't have to worry about being able to see it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's dark, if you're not maybe up the pulpit, the lighting's always a certain way. But there's just different times, and different points. These glasses still work pretty good, but uh, you know, uh, it can sometimes take you when you have, you know, older people eyes. Uh, you know, it can take you, even though these are the multifocal type lenses, but it can still sometimes take you, okay, yeah, there it is. There's the sweet, you get to that sweet spot. So if you read and then you look up, do some talking, it can take you a little bit of time to get back to where you were. Uh, so PowerPoint, when it's on the screen, you don't have to worry about that. But the other main reason I do it, and this is something that and so even here, I've got the scriptures pulled up. When you are watching it on a media, it is really difficult to follow along when you have to pull up a Bible and then you do that, and it makes it much easier. Plus, say you're watching it on the phone. Say you're out, you've got an hour to spare, and you want to watch something. want to watch something scriptural or whatever. If you're out somewhere in the middle of blue, you may not have your Bible. And so if someone's just reading it to you, so it's nice for the person on TV to be able to see it when you're reading it. Other thing that I think we've lost a little bit. Have you ever noticed when, say, a preacher has a different translation than what you have? It can be sometimes a little, okay. Well, I think that's where it's at. It can sometimes be a little difficult. So when I put it on the board, everybody can follow that. Now, if they want to get their own Bible out and use it as comparison, hey, more power to them. That's good. But they can see what I'm reading, and they can figure it out better. I think that way. So,
Gives me a chance when that does happen.
Mhm.
I got a different version than them. I read along as best I can in mine.
yes,
I see the difference.
see the difference. So, but if it's on the board, it's even better because you got it there and you can be more prepared. The other thing that we always have to be mindful of, there are some people that, so they may not have, and that's not a huge print Bible, but some people don't have good eyes.
I'm having trouble reading these.
There you go. Some people don't have good ears. And so we need to be, I think, as accommodating as we can. So people that can't see good, and church buildings are notorious. In fact, unless it's a newly designed building where they got all the overhead lights where it's like mega bright in there. This is good lighting here. This is nice and bright. But most church buildings, especially if they're a little older, the lighting is usually very dim compared to normal lighting circumstance. So when you have hard times reading something, so it's small, whatever, the poorer the light is, the harder it is to read it. And so, even people that have difficulty hearing, if they've got it on screen, it's easier to follow along. Okay, that's what he's saying, because generally when you have poor hearing, it's not that you don't hear anything. It's like some of it gets a little garbled. It's hard to understand. But if you have it on screen, you're like, okay, that's what he's saying, or that's what's going on. So it helps in those people. So I guess that's the third reason. Uh, and there are sometimes I do wish I could go back and just do a regular sermon, and I do like those times when I can do that. But as a whole, I will probably always try to have at least the verses up there so people can follow that along. Different people have different thoughts, but that's kind of my thoughts, and it does help the people. Our congregation is not unlike a lot of congregations. It skews older. Have you noticed that? Well, you probably have, but it skews older. That's not uncommon in any congregation. In fact, I don't think that's really ever been that uncommon. I've been looking through a lot of our directories, and you know what I noticed? It always skewed older. Now, the fact it was bigger, we had good numbers and different demographics. But if you actually did a percentage, we're probably not much different than they were back then. Why do you think that's the case? I don't think that's ever changed. I think it's always been that way. It's just that when you get small, you notice it, and you do have a danger of not having any young people. Don't get me wrong; that's a good fear. But the fact is, it's always skewed older. So why do you think churches always skew older in the people that are there? Well, what do young? First of all, young people go through a big change when they get from about 18 to 25. When you're 18, all of a sudden you get around that 18-year-old. What you know everything, don't you? You don't know nothing, but you think you do. And so you go through a lot of kids, not every kid, but a lot of kids go through this transition where uh, you know well, mom and daddy, they weren't all that right. I know better than them. I'm gonna, do this and that, be much better. And a lot of times they will leave behind the spirituality of their life, okay, for a while. Like I said, now this isn't every case, but a lot of people do. Get about 25, well, that's usually when they start getting married, they're having children, and all of a sudden they start thinking differently. Their mind is fully developed, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, my parents did a pretty good job," or they did this good, or whatever, and they start being more serious about things. Things mean more to them. but they still might be into the religion stuff yet. And the reason being is when you're 25, how much time did you think about, oh, my body aches and pains. I don't sleep as good as I used to. Boy, I hurt when I get up, or uh, you know, uh, all kinds of things like that. Oh, I better take my medicine. I better do this and that. When you're 25, how much of that's going on? Most 25-year-olds, they believe it's going to be like that for a long time. It's like they almost have this invincibility to them. They think, you know, I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm not going to get old. Guess what happens though? They get about late 30s, 40s. They start feeling it, don't they? And then you get to that next level at some point. So all these different transitions are times when I think God has given us these experiences so we have opportunities to go back to Him and really pursue Him. And I think the greatest generation that always wants to please God are the older people because they know they're nearest their lives being gone. So as you get older, you start thinking about, I think even you start getting around 40 or 50, you realize half my life is over now. You know, I'm on the downhill slide and things are different. And so you start thinking about, your kids, your grandkids, you want them to come up right. And so it's not a surprise that people, as they get older, they tend to be more faithful in church. Um, it's always special. In fact, the ones that go different to this, they should be heralded, they should be applauded. And the ones that generally do that, guess what? They're the ones that rise up to be your elders, your deacons, and other things. But that's just the way it is. It's always been that way. Probably always will, sadly. But so as a result, you can go through those directories, and if I'd say well over 50% are people that are 60 or older, any of the directories. And but as a result, maybe in times past when people got that age, we didn't. It's always been, how many times have you heard this statement? The feature of the church is the young. How many times have you heard that? Bunch. You hear it all the time. Well, yes, they kind of are the future. But what's the present of the church? Older. Yeah. So, we need to be taking care of our own. We need to instill in all the different demographics we got. We need to give them a purpose to grow, and get stronger. And so a lot of times we kind of get that, and then we just put all our hope on, well, if we get some young people in, it'll be fine. Well, there's other ways to do it. And in fact, I think they're better than that dynamic. So anyway, let's get back. I don't know if we got any time left at all. No, we don't. It's been a beneficial study. We will get into it, and I think that's what I'll work on next week. I'll work on basically getting um, the uh, I'll work on getting a kind of a map type thing of all these different kings and what they did, and we'll use that. I think that would be a good, useful study. It'd be similar to what's in this Thompson chain. If you don't have a Thompson chain, obviously you can do a lot of this stuff on your own. There are different records out there. Um, the I always caution people, especially the newer they are to studying the Bible, on some study Bibles. Uh, a study Bible is nothing more a traditional study Bible. That's not what this is. A traditional study Bible is nothing more than a commentary. Well, some commentaries are good, some commentaries aren't very good. In fact, you get a commentary from a guy named C.I. Scofield, who lived about, the early 1900s. He wrote his commentary. I would not recommend that to anyone other than maybe a preacher that wants to use it as a reference to speak against the errors of that. He was a premillennialist, by the way, if you're not aware of it. And so some commentaries are not very good, some are good. So that's what you get with study Bibles. Some of it's good. In fact, generally, what you get in study Bibles is there's a lot of good things in it, and then there's some bad things. So, uh, someone that's really skilled and has learned and studied a lot, study Bibles are nothing but good. But someone that's still not quite firm on what they believe, what the scripture says, a study Bible can be actually a deterrent because it can get you skewed on some of your thoughts that should be primary. So, um, be that as it may, I do like the Thompson Chain. Some study Bibles are great. I have study Bibles. I'll sometimes look at them. They'll have some good information, especially on historical things, but on things that most people would label as doctrinal things, things they teach. You've got to kind of know enough to know when they are speaking the truth or not. These issues generally deal with things like instrumental music, purpose of baptism, and things like that. Even the nature of the church. Some of those things you've got to be wary on a traditional study Bible. But if you're really knowledgeable in what those things say, you'll look at it and say, well, that's not true. And, it might even be a good opportunity for you in your mind to say, well, this is not true. But someone that isn't quite grounded yet, it can be something that kind of, well, I can see that. I can see what they say and equate those two thoughts as the same. And, so we need to steer away from that from people that are not skilled in the Bible yet. The two study Bibles I recommend are the Thompson Chain because it doesn't really tell you what to believe. It just points you to everything and gives you a lot of information. And then Apology Express and their uh, study Bible is mainly just different things that Apology Express has went through, and it is all good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream. We'll be back next week. Get back into the scope of things, and hopefully this new year will go well.